Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pedagogy in Practice. In this video, we are going to treat you to an interview with Professor Neeley Hatridge out of the Communications Department, where she is going to talk to you about how she conducts her public speaking class. She's got a lot of interesting things to say, so without further ado, let's get right into it. Hey Neeley, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Matt. Happy to be here.
Would you mind telling our viewers really quick which department you're in and what you teach?
I'm in the communication department, and I primarily teach public speaking, and I also teach a leadership and communication course.
Very awesome. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is I hear you have an awesome hybrid course. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've taught face-to-face for years, and I've also done some online teaching solely online. But for those who aren't as familiar with what a hybrid course is, it's really the combination of the two. It's the hybrid of the face-to-face and the online portion. And some do it a little differently. Some will meet with their students about once a week while there's online course content. But I format mine more on where I meet them twice a week, and we compress it down though to 8 weeks. So you can imagine how fast-paced it is, especially for a public speaking course, because that's the one that I teach as a hybrid, is my public speaking course. And it is quite intense for some students, I would say, because it is somewhat fast-paced, but it is very focused. I think that's what a lot of my students appreciate, is it's how focused it is on what we're there to do.
And as you sort of in teaching the course, how do you approach it?
So, like I said, since it's only 8 weeks, I approach it kind of as a quasi summer school course and an online course, if that makes sense. So for those of you who've ever taught a summer school course, they're typically 4 or 6 weeks. But since we have 8, it feels like a long summer school course. Yeah. But because it's public speaking, it actually has an additional component which can make it tricky for most hybrid courses, because it has a performance requirement. So each of my students has to speak 22 minutes in front of an audience, and those minutes have to be evaluated. And so you can see that that adds up quickly when you have approximately 30 students. And so how I have to approach it is mostly as an online course, because most of our class time is spent giving and listening to speeches. By way of example, I tell this to my students ahead of time. I let them know we have approximately, I think this upcoming semester, I have a class that's going to be meeting only 14 times.
Okay.
With finals week and holidays, we're only going to be meeting 14 times as a class. 10 of those are speaking days. Yes.
Yeah.
So for my course, or any course that has a performance requirement, it can be tricky. You have to be very strategic. And so I essentially teach it like I would an online class, but that the performance or performative aspects are face-to-face.
So it sounds like you have to be pretty targeted with those meetup times.
Very, very targeted. Yes.
So in terms of being targeted, like when it comes to the prep and planning for that, like, before semester, what sort of work are you doing? What are you doing within, what's your prep and planning process like?
I would say definitely the prep and planning is prior to the semester beginning. Once you get going in the semester, there's not a whole lot left for you to do except to fix errors or answer very individualized questions that students might have, or provide additional examples if a student needs that. But the majority of it is before the semester begins. It's going through your Canvas shell sort of with a fine-tooth comb, updating things. We just got our new website, so having to go through and make sure all your links work. Anytime you make a change to something, really thinking about how does that impact? It's a domino effect, right? How is that going to impact everything else that we do in class. I would also say, because of the particular class that I teach, I'm very selective over the activities and the assignments I give out, because they need to be easy for the students to understand on their own, because for the most part, they are individualized or independent learners.
Got it. So, and I didn't ask you this question previously, but I think it's closely coordinated with planning and prep. So how would you say that in the way you conduct it, it separates your course from others like it?
So, meaning, how is it different than other hybrids, or how would it be different than a face-to-face traditional?
Both. I guess we can explore both.
Okay. So the first aspects I would say is different than other hybrids, again, because of that performance requirement. So other hybrid courses that don't have that would still have a lot of in-class time that you're using to build classroom community, you're using to do group work and explain concepts and that sort of thing. Whereas I don't have that kind of time built in to my schedule because of the amount of speaking days. So I have to think about that in terms of the assignments and how I get the students to relate to the assignment, to want to open up. I mean, if you think about public speaking in general, it's terrifying for most people. So it's creating an atmosphere in a very, very short window where they feel comfortable being vulnerable in front of a group of strangers, not just the speech aspects, but the content aspects as well, what I'm asking them to share. So that can be tricky, right? The other ways that it's different than a traditional public speaking course is extending kind of what I said before. You don't have as much time with them, as much face-to-face time, as much time to help those that might be really struggling with, I would say, the anxiety side of things. In fact, going a little bit back to the prep and plan, one thing that I typically do prior to the start of the semester is that I send out an email, their welcome email, like most of us do, but I give them some food for thought about who might find this course a little extra difficult. And it's students that might need a lot of one-on-one FaceTime with an instructor to work out some of those concerns, or if it's students who are terrified of public speaking.
I would have been one of those, believe it or not.
And I still, these aren't exclusive or exclusions. It's not saying you cannot take this class, but it is one of those things I'm like, you might want to consider this or some of these aspects, or whether or not you have a personal situation that you're going to have to miss a lot of days. That's a big thing. So you don't have that kind of time in the 8-week hybrid for my class, especially because it's mostly performance. And it can, I reinforce to them that when they come to class, they really do have to be prepared, because we will start giving speeches and then we pretty much don't stop until the end of the semester. So I let them know, you're leaving here on a Thursday having finished up your first speech. When you come back on Tuesday, we're going to start listening to your second speech. So it's a really quick turnaround time. But I find that focus really helps them, because it's constantly working and reworking on that skill. They don't have time to get stagnant or cold. They're kind of constantly going.
Well, it sounds like you have so many great things going in your class, and it sounds like you're doing an excellent job of setting up your students for success, even prior to the start of the semester, which is key, and I love to hear that. So I'm very curious about what sort of feedback you've received from your students.
I think like any class, there's going to be mixed feedback, but I think no matter what, my students can never say they weren't informed or prepared or that they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. I will say that. I give lots of early warnings about expectations and things that they might need to do to organize their schedules and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I will say that you would think that it would be difficult to create that classroom community in a short 8 weeks, but still by the end of it, a lot of students are like, this is sad. This is the last time we're going to be together. Because you learn so much about each other in the speech assignments that I give. It draws out personal experiences and interests and that sort of thing. And so the students do connect with one another. Do
you mind if I ask about like this, like what you think in those assignments helps pull, themselves out, to show everybody in the class? Like, is it specific prompts that you give, or how does that work?
So I'm a big believer in student-led interests and them pulling topics that mean something to them. And so I try to give them boundaries, but I also let them know if they have an idea that they're not sure if it fits within my boundaries, like, please come and talk to me about it. So for example, the very first speech they give, I call it the obstacle or hope speech. And I tell them to think of an obstacle that they've overcome and share with us that obstacle. And I give this big sort of speech to them about, they aren't their obstacles. They don't have to feel shame from the things that have happened to them, but they should feel proud of how they've worked through them and that sort of thing. And I really let them know that they're inspirational to think about what they've come through and the stories that my students, their lives. I always say that it's like my boohoo days, because they're going to see me cry and they're going to see some of their classmates cry just because of the nature of the speeches that we listen to. And so they're pulling personal experiences from those. And I tell them they can kind of go as deep or as shallow as they want, right? If you want to talk about your obstacle as, oh, I procrastinate and it's hard for me to wake up in the morning, right? You can talk about that. Or if you want to go as deep as surviving abuse, that's fine too. And so we've heard all types of speeches. I also give them the option of turning it into a hope speech. So instead of talking about an obstacle, they can talk about something that gives them hope for the future. Is it a belief? Is it a person that inspires them and helps motivate them for the future? What gives them hope for the future? And then sometimes they tell them they can make it a hybrid. It can be, oh, I overcame this obstacle and that's what gives me hope for the future.
Nice.
So, but they pull a lot of their personal experiences from that. And, I'll get students that come to me and they're like, is it okay to talk about this? And I said, do you want to talk about that? Yeah, then it's okay.
Yeah.
So I just give them boundaries and sort of some targets, and as long as they hit them, we're good.
It's amazing because within those boundaries, to me, it sounds like you give them so much choice, right? Like whether, I have the obstacle, the hope, or both, and then it really seems to me that it must also do a very good job in sort of demystifying that typical classroom environment of the dynamic between student and teacher, because you're exposing yourself and making yourself vulnerable if you're telling them, they're going to see you in tears too and things like that. And I'm just amazed at how much, that probably tears down, typical walls in standard classrooms,
Well, and that's one of the few days that I get to talk to the students outside of speeches. That very first day, I'm already laying the groundwork for, like you said, the power differentials, right? Mm-hmm. So I let them know I am not the only teacher in the classroom. And just because I've been speaking publicly or teaching for over a decade, I am going to make mistakes. They're going to see me make mistakes. They're going to see me stutter. They're going to hear me say, they're going to see me make a weird hand gesture, right? Yeah. Those things are going to happen. None of us are perfect. And I reemphasize, it's not about perfection, but it's about connection and connecting with one another, connecting with me, and ultimately connecting with your community, whatever your community is. So a lot of it does go back to breaking down those power differentials for sure.
Awesome. I love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, so my final question for you is for faculty that will be teaching hybrid, or whether that's with performance or not, what advice do you have for any faculty?
Don't give up after doing it once. So I won't name names, but I had taught hybrid about, I should say 3 rounds of hybrid. So I was on my third 8-week round, and another faculty member in our department wanted to try it as well. And so she began doing it. And my chair at the time said, "Hey, you might want to check in and see how she's doing, because I think she's struggling a little bit and questioning her life choices," right? So it really is just one of those things, a steep learning curve. You learn so much session to session. So in one semester, you get to teach 2 8-week sessions. You learn so much after the first 8. You're already making changes for your next one. So I would say don't give up. The next thing I would say is make sure your Canvas shell is pretty solid and dialed in. Open up every assignment before the semester. If you can have it a week prior to the start of the semester, that's great. And the last one is make your students work for you. So I always tell them, if you find an inconsistency or you find something wrong, message me and you get extra credit. So if there's a link that's broken, if this due date, it says this on the calendar, but the assignment says something different, message me and I will fix that and you will get extra credit. And they do, because I will make mistakes. I promise you I will make mistakes.
I think I might have to use that in my own class.
Yeah. And then you know what? It's kind of a little bit of a psychology trick, right? Because I've been a student when something has been wrong and you're like, oh, it might be 2 a.m. and this is the only time that you have to work on something and that link is not working. You're not, So I always I'm very reasonable with them. I just let them know, like, hey, if there's a problem, we'll fix it and it'll be okay. Yeah. And then they're happy when they find my mistakes. And then I have to say, okay, I don't mean like a typo.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, I love it. It sounds great. You have a lot going on within the class. And it even sounds to me like within your department, there's sort of this approach that permits some level of mentorship among the faculty in your department that make it more open to discussion and figuring out things.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that comes with what our discipline teaches. I would say so much of it is skill-based, behavior-based content. Mm-hmm. So we're always happy to learn from each other.
That's excellent. Well, thank you, Neeley. It's been great having you here. I hope, there's so much to learn from. I hope that our viewers glean so much off of this interview. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you around campus.
Thank you. I appreciate it. See you soon.
See you. And there you have it. That's it for this episode. So please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time. Bye.